Hello, lovely people. Apologies for the last couple of days. The changing weather here in the UK took its toll on me, and I was knocked down by the flu virus. But the good news is that I'm on the mend and therefore couldn't stop myself from doing what I have tried to do in the last 2 years or so, bring my hard hitting analysis on big international stories, particularly on the situation in Gaza. So, Charlie Kirk was right. So were all those people who thought that the 7th of October attacks were an inside job by Israeli terrorists led by a convicted war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. This dreaded terrorist's public and shameless request for a pardon in the corruption case simply proves that. Remember what Charlie Kirk has said with a visibly frightened face before his assassination. He had posed some difficult questions to the rogue regime of Israel and its Western backers. We all have said the same thing, but why was it important that Charlie said that? Because he was an ardent supporter of Israel in the past. So, him asking these questions were really important. What did he ask? He said, how could Hamas launch such an extraordinary attack deep inside Israel when the land stolen from Palestinians had a presence of a sizable Israeli terrorist everywhere? Also, why were Israeli terrorists from their official terror outfit called the IDF so late in responding to these attacks? Charlie had also asked if there was a stand down order, i.e., was there official instruction from war criminal Netanyahu for the IDF to not act? And not to forget the news published in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, highlighting how Israeli terrorists themselves had caused the carnage by killing hundreds of their own people as part of its Hannibal directive.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here. But I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I gotta be careful the way I say this. They're gonna try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yep. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. My plead to Israel is be precise, be focused in your retaliation.
If they do overreact, I'm more coming from a place of thinking this was intentional. If they don't overreact, then this wasn't intentional. Meaning, if all of a sudden you see an all-out annihilation...
What do you mean by intentional? That they knew it was going to happen?
No, when you're asking about the stand down 6 hours and 3 hours, then why did you? What intel are you getting? So we're on the same page.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. All I'm saying
I just wanted to make sure I understood.
This bit is important. There were already mass protests against Netanyahu before the 7th of October attacks. And as Charlie pointed out, hundreds of thousands of people were expected to gather demanding his ouster from power in the same week when 7th of October attacks happened. As expected, Israelis forgot about Netanyahu's corruption cases as they began to jubilantly watch the genocide of Palestinian men, women, children, and babies by Israeli terrorists. That's why I say this video clip of Charlie Kirk has become hugely important in light of two major developments. First, as soon as the so-called peace deal was signed on Gaza, Trump wrote an extraordinary letter to terrorist Isaac Herzog, also known as the president of the settler colony. In his letter, the president of the most powerful country on earth was seen begging, literally begging, a sociopath from a rogue settler colony for a pardon for Netanyahu in the ongoing corruption cases. This is what Trump had written in his letter, and I quote, "As the great state of Israel and the amazing Jewish people move past the terribly difficult times of the last 3 years, I hereby call on you to fully pardon Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been a formidable and decisive wartime prime minister and is now leading Israel into a time of peace." He had gone on to add, "While I absolutely respect the independence of the Israeli justice system and its requirements, I believe that this case against Bibi Netanyahu, who has fought alongside me for a long time, including against the very tough adversary of Israel, Iran, is a political, unjustified prosecution." End quote. Of course, Trump's letter was long. I've only read out the important bits. Writing a letter seeking a pardon for a bloodthirsty terrorist was the topmost priority for Trump immediately after signing a so-called peace deal. This would give you an idea to understand the chronology of the event and the sinister plan by the rogue settler colony and its Western backers behind the 7th of October attacks. Herzog was quick to reply to Trump, saying that he would consider his request if terrorist Netanyahu himself makes a formal request. This is how sick this Israeli society is. One convicted felon makes a request to an evil man from the settler colony, seeking a pardon for a war criminal. That evil man then says he would consider pardoning the terrorist in question if that terrorist makes a formal request himself. And that psychopath has now done that. Yesterday, the man who symbolizes everything evil issued this video message.
אזרחי ישראל, כמעט עשור עבר מאז החלו החקירות נגדי. המשפט בענייני מתנהל קרוב ל6 שנים, והוא צפוי להימשך עוד הרבה שנים. ככל שהעדויות והראיות המזכות שמקריסות לחלוטין את טיעוני השווא נגדי נחשפות בבית המשפט, וככל שמתברר שהתשתית הראייתית נגדי גובשה תוך ביצוע עבירות חמורות, האינטרס האישי שלי היה ונותר להמשיך את התהליך עד סופו, עד לזיכוי המלא בכל היישובים. אבל המציאות הביטחונית והמדינית, האינטרס הלאומי, אלה מחייבים אחרת. מדינת ישראל ניצבת מול אתגרים כבירים, ולצידם הזדמנויות אדירות. כדי להדוף את האיומים, כדי לממש את ההזדמנויות, נדרשת אחדות לאומית. המשך המשפט קורע אותנו מבפנים, מעורר מחלקות הזאת, מעצים שסעים. אני בטוח, כמו רבים אחרים בעם, שסיום מיידי של המשפט יסייע רבות להנמיך את הלהבות ולקדם פיוס רחב שהמדינה שלנו כל כך זקוקה לו. התלבטתי רבות בעניין זה, אבל מה שקרה בזמן האחרון הכריע את הכף. בגלל החלטה שנובעת מהרכב השופטים הדן בתיק, אני נדרש להעיד 3 פעמים בשבוע. 3 פעמים בשבוע. זו דרישה בלתי אפשרית שאיננה נדרשת משום אזרח אחר בישראל. כמו כן, עמדו לנגד עיניי פניותיו החוזרות ונשנות של הנשיא טראמפ לנשיא המדינה. הנשיא טראמפ קרא לסיום מיידי של המשפט כדי שאוכל יחד איתו לקדם ביתר שאת אינטרסים חיוניים המשותפים לישראל ולארצות הברית בחלון זמנים שספק אם יחזור.
Now you tell me why it's wrong to say that 7th of October attacks took place at the behest of war criminal Netanyahu. How is it wrong to conclude that he caused the 7th of October attacks to divert people's attention from the trial in his ongoing corruption cases? He spent 2 years completely destroying Gaza and killing hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, children, and babies. He left no stone unturned in causing the biggest ever Holocaust of the last couple of centuries. This helped him earn the sympathy of the Sikh Israeli society. I'm repeating the word Sikh to describe the Israeli society. That's because I stumbled upon this video this week while I was down with flu. You tell me which society has children going crazy in awe of a dreaded terrorist. This was the reaction of Israeli youth to Smotrich. Which civilized society teaches its children to hero worship a depraved and deranged person? And I have repeatedly used the term so-called peace deal to describe the situation in Gaza. That's because there is no ceasefire in Gaza. Israeli terrorists have not fulfilled a single point of the so-called ceasefire agreement. They have kept on bombing and killing innocent civilians, destroying whatever was left of Gaza's civilian infrastructures, and refusing to allow the entry of the required aid supply. Israeli barbarians have now expanded the so-called yellow line. In other words, Israeli terrorists have rewritten the map of Gaza. They have continued to increase the size of its occupation. Because we have another evil man occupying the White House, that evil man has chosen to look the other way despite these repeated violations by his war criminal friend. That's the effing the US administration for you. The sick Jewish Americans like Sarah Hertzwitz wonders why every young Jewish American is turning against Israel. Instead of hanging her head in shame, she wants to ban smartphones for young Jewish Americans. The genocide is kosher for them as long as this is not adversely impacting their propaganda in the Western world. This tells you why young Americans have risen against these sick and evil people. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.